Hey Josh, how's it going?
It's going well, Elliot. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm pretty good. You know, wanted to talk side hustles again. I know this is part two of the conversation that we had before, but just wanted to give you some time because I know that we went pretty deep on that first episode and I felt like you had some more things to say. So I'll kind of cede the floor to you first. Let's get into it there, and then we can kind of explore just more broadly what we like about side hustles.
Yeah, sure. So I guess I'll go all the way back to 2012, which is where I really started to do that paid by the hour sort of side hustle, if you will. That was the handyman work. And I talked about that in the episode about real estate, where I met up with an investor. This was before I started getting into my own real estate investing. I was introduced to another investor. She needed a handyman to do some basic jobs around her properties, and she paid me by the hour. Did that for a couple of years, and then eventually that transitioned into me purchasing my own property. But I did that from about 2012 to 2015. I think the thing that was nice about that at the time was, for the most part, I could work the hours that whatever time frame was available to me, and it was very flexible. So she didn't expect me to be anywhere at a certain time. She would just give me a list of things that she wanted me to either look at or fix, and I could do them in the evenings or weekends, whatever fit my schedule.
A question about that. So, with having kind of a ongoing list and just having that flexibility, like that's fantastic. That's what you want in a side hustle, right? Were these primarily in units that were unoccupied that allowed you to have that flexibility, or like traditionally I would think especially in the real estate world, you would, from a handyman perspective, would be more like, hey, tenant has something break, you have to go show up and fix something that's a need for them.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think there was a mix of both. Sometimes it was a turnover situation. So she would say, hey, can you go in and maybe clean up the stuff that they left behind or touch up the paint or whatever? So that was definitely more flexible, although she would want those things to be corrected fairly quickly so that she could get somebody else in there. The other items where somebody lived there, they typically weren't it wasn't an emergency situation. It was usually something like they needed a light fixture replaced or they were having an issue with their garbage disposal, something like that. It wasn't like the toilet was overflowing where like a plumber needed to get there immediately. For those, she generally would rely on somebody else. I think she had another guy that was more of a on a full-time basis with her who handled like larger projects, and she had a lot of doors in the St. Louis area. I think back then it was somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 to 40 units. So she had a sizable amount of properties and she had more people working for her than just me.
Gotcha, that makes sense.
Yeah, I talked about the YouTube stuff. So around this time is whenever I really started to explore YouTube, and I mentioned that my buddy Greg and I we started that How to Fix It workshop channel. And I think I talked about that a little bit in the last episode, but that one is, I mean, YouTube is almost as passive as it gets because depending on how good of quality your videos are, and if they're evergreen content, meaning somebody's going to search for them 5 years from now, you can put all that work in right now and then continue to get paid for it, almost like an author, where you're getting residual income for as long as somebody's willing to watch that video. So we started doing that, and I don't make a lot of money at that, but it's a few $100s a month, and it's videos that I made 10 years ago are still getting views today.
I
Like,
mean, I'm not gonna shirk it. A couple $100 a month. Before we jumped on the call today, I was talking about the litany of things that randomly seem to be breaking around my house. So I was probably also supporting people that have that evergreen content out there. So if anybody knows anything about Kenmore Cold Spot Model 106 fridges and diagnosing problems, you hit me up.
yeah, it's an incredible resource. I mean, I'm just glad to be a part of it, and I get emails or comments on the videos all the time. I mean, almost daily where people are reaching out and saying, thank you for this video. This saved me so much time, or saved me a call to an appliance repairman, or whatever the case might be. This is good information. I was able to take this and fix this around my house. So it's a lot of just like how to videos, simple stuff. We don't get too carried away. Neither of us are experts in anything. We're just DIYers, and we like to create the content and put it out there. And it's been rewarding over the years.
Absolutely.
And then finally got into my own real estate investing, and we had a whole episode on that one. But that one, as we talked about, I think on the last episode, is one that's passive-ish, where we put a lot of the upfront legwork into it over the years. And similar to the handyman work and really the work with YouTube, it was just something that I can do on my free time. So there was no schedule, there was no boss, there was no strict time commitment that I had to dedicate 8 hours a day on a Saturday and Sunday to rehab a property. It was our one of our most recent houses took us 3 years to renovate. So it's just at our own pace and on our own schedule. Over the long run, that really starts to pay off, and you start to get kind of like that flywheel starts to take effect, and you really start to realize those passive-ish income.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the dream, right? Is just the set and forget it, and it just the money keeps on rolling in.
Yeah, and these are the kind of some of the examples that I've experimented with. I mean, some of them it kind of ebbs and flows with my energy levels and whatever I'm excited about at the time. But I think with a lot of these, anybody can get started in a variety of things. And the good thing is, most of these, with the exception of real estate, don't take a lot of upfront money to get started, and they don't have to be a tremendous time commitment. And if you have a skill, whatever that might be, I think everybody has a certain level of skills that are unique to them that they could figure out a way to monetize.
Yeah.
For me, it just happens to be like things that I can do with my hand. Is I can be creative. I can make furniture. I can fix something. I can build something. And it took me a while to kind of figure that out, but I've started to put myself out there and become a little more comfortable with finding customers for some of these things. I haven't even gotten into the furniture flipping or building furniture part yet, but those are some of the things that my wife Lori and I have experimented with. And at times it's challenging to figure out what kind of rate to charge for the work that you're going to do. But again, it's another example of something that we have done in our free time, and the level of excitement ebbs and flows over time. So sometimes we're not doing those things at all. Sometimes we'll have a backlog of a couple items for customers or family and friends that we're working on. But it's just an example of something that like we were okay at doing. We did it for ourselves, and then we started to look for customers and ways that we could make a little bit of extra money to do it for other people. And I said it before, but I think it's worth repeating that everybody has a certain type of skill set. And I think that there's just so many different opportunities now to be able to explore those and monetize those experience levels.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I know you were certainly way more handy than I am by every measure of the word, but I mean, the same thing holds true is finding out what you're engaged about, what you're passionate about, what you're generally good at, and it doesn't even have to be something that you're good at, but willing to try something, see if it sticks. There's tons of learning to be had even through things that are failures, right? That's where the greatest opportunity for growth really is by failing at something. And so, like you said, you start somewhere where, hey, I'm going to try it for myself. It's good enough for me. You and I worked on my van the other day, and I know a quote that you had said was the best way to learn something is to learn on somebody else's car. So, stuff like that is, and obviously I was a welcome recipient of the assistance because otherwise I would have gone straight to the mechanics. You learn skills, you build that talent stack like we've talked about before. And I know that Jonathan from Choose Fi likes to popularize that term, but I mean, that's exactly true. Is you continue to build those skills and learn how to leverage those in a way that allows you to ultimately make your life a little bit better.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that comment that I made about your van and how to learn on somebody else's vehicle. And, I said that a little bit tongue in cheek, but if I think back to whenever I started selling furniture, by no means a master craftsman or anything like that, but I was building furniture for my own house, the desk that I'm sitting at right now, Lori's desk that's behind me, made all of these, made our dining table, like literally, I don't know, a good 75% of the furniture in my home I made. And I was just making stuff for myself, but then I started to have friends that would say things like, "You're really good at this," or, they would say, "You should sell stuff." So that was like planting the seeds probably 10 years ago or more. And that's whenever it kind of like really started to, I guess, give me a level of confidence that I could put myself out there. So I started out with just family and friends, but then I kind of started to create a little bit of a side business where I started marketing myself on Facebook a little bit. And then I was getting inundated with requests and had to slow that down a little bit, which is a good problem to have, but it can be a little stressful when you're not able to keep up with the demand. But I say all that to go back to the point where a lot of the things that I was getting requests for were things that were outside of I would say, my skill set or my experience level that I hadn't built before. It gave me an opportunity to learn because somebody would give me a picture of something or they would reach out and say, can you make this for me? And early on, I was really eager and I would say yes to just about everything. And then I would just like figure it out afterwards. And it allowed me to continue to grow that skill set. And also it gave me an opportunity to buy higher quality tools. And because I was making money off of the sales that I was generating at the time. But I think there's, again, so much opportunity out there that everybody should really look at what maybe somebody has told them that they are good at and kind of dig a little deeper at that and see if there's a way to explore that, monetize that, and create your own little side hustle.
I think there is a lot to be said for being competent at something. And like you said, kind of hitting the ball down the fairway with things that you're comfortable with and producing high quality end results. But at the same time, the highest area for growth is going to be those areas where it's uncharted waters, so to speak. And there's a lot of opportunity there. So
There is. And there's a lot of people that are willing to pay for stuff that a lot of times I think most of us will take that for granted and think maybe you wouldn't pay for that service or you wouldn't charge that much for whatever it is that you're doing. Like, I mean, simplest terms, cutting the grass. I know that I still cut my own grass and you hire that out. And I'm not, saying I agree with one way or the other. I've considered exploring the idea of getting somebody else to cut my grass, but there's lots of young people, kids, whatever, as well as full size landscaping companies that'll do that service. And a lot of times it's thinking about like, what is my time worth to me?
I mean, clearly in that situation, right, is like you said, I hire it out, you do it yourself. I can think of multiple times in the last week or two where I've reached out to you during the day and you're like, "Oh yeah, sorry, you caught me mulching leaves or something." And I'm like, "Man, I don't know, Josh. If I were in your shoes, I mean, to each their own. Like, I mean, I get that, but of course, there are enterprising people out there that will happily mulch your leaves for you or cut your grass. But that's not to say that you should, just because you can. But ultimately, it is how do you want to spend your time and how do you want to spend your money? Brad from Choosify keeps on throwing out that $100 in expenses being cut equates to $90,000 off your FI number. The extrapolation of not only is it the 100 a month times 12 gets you your number times 25, but then and I think that comes out to, I don't know, I would have to go pull up a calculator, but I think it's like 30,000. And then it's here. I'm going to do it because otherwise I'm going to look like an idiot.
Public math is hard.
Yeah, right. No, so $100 a month times 12 is 1,200 times your 25, so that's 30,000. But I think then the where he extrapolates out to 90 is saying the if you were to turn around and then invest that 30,000 is where you were getting up to that 90,000.
Over a
So,
course of a number of years.
yeah, exactly.
I remember where I was trying to go with that conversation on the lawnmowers. I don't know how I'll weave this in, but kid in the neighborhood put himself on the Nextdoor app and said, "Hey, I'll do things around your house." And he is making hand over fist money to like clean up leaves and a variety of other things around people's houses, like dig ditches and just basic like landscaping type stuff. And there's people out there that are willing to pay for those services, and that's not necessarily a skill, but it's something that he can kind of pick and choose what he wants to do when he wants to do it. Can work around his school schedule and his sports schedule. And if it can work for a 16-year-old, it can certainly work for a 20-year-old, 36-year-old, so on and so forth. I mean, we all have different skills and experience levels that we can look for ways that we can make some extra money if that's of interest to us.
Even another example, and I don't know how we would weave this all in, but essentially you were saying how you were having trouble getting in touch with a contractor, right, for replacing a roof, and how you've called out to a number of different companies and how you only got a response back from one. It's like, okay, you see the gap. Like clearly there is a gap in customer service that for these particular companies, it's not to say that they're not good companies, but there is a need that is essentially, hey, here's my money. Please take it from me if you just do basic customer service. But because these companies aren't doing that, they're losing sales at the end of the day. So just because you may think of side hustles as, you know, people may think of it as gig work or hey, I need to be working with my hands or anything else. That's not necessarily true. It's you need to go find a problem and find a different way that you can insert yourself into that particular need and offer that service.
Yeah,
So,
that's a great point. Most of these, over my experience, most of the side hustles that I've had have been some form of a problem solver. People need a thing. I have the ability to create it or point them in the right direction via YouTube video or provide a service because it's a rental property or whatever. It's just providing some level of a service to somebody else, variety of different mediums.
exactly. So, Josh, what about teaching kids about side hustles? Have you instilled that bug into your children's ears, so to speak?
I've been encouraging it for years and years, and to an extent, a couple of them have experimented with it. In fact, my youngest son, just today, he's out and about trying to make a deal for getting himself a pickup truck because he wants to explore opportunities for doing other side hustles. But my youngest, more than some of the older ones, has done a lot of that. He's done some of the furniture flipping. He has gone around on bulk trash pickup days and looked for things that he can recycle, like metal items, like appliances and things like that, and pick them up to haul them away. He has he's done a bunch of different things just to earn a few dollars here and there. And of course, he's done some of the more, I guess, traditional gig economy things that are like door dashing that are popular now. But I that's really cool to see at somebody at his age that's willing to just get out there and hustle and make a few dollars and just experiment with different things. And some of them are fairly lucrative, like driving around for a few hours to find a bunch of busted down appliances that people are sticking out to the curb on bulk trash pickup day.
That's great that clearly your son has taken on, I guess, the bug of side hustles and really experimenting and seeing what it has to offer is I think there is some piece of me that I think from just doing kind of what is so ingrained in us, through typical education is to say, hey, you go to school, you go to college, you get a good job, and, you know, you go sit in that office, earn that W 2 paycheck, and then you work a long time and you retire, right? Is that's the standard script. And I know you and I, through our careers, we certainly went down that path to a decent degree, right? Now, of course, we've each talked about our own side hustles, but there is, I would say, a twinge of remorse in some regards, just saying that how much that takes away the flexibility and some of the opportunity that you would have by taking a less, and I wouldn't even call it a less conventional path, but it's not the path that is just drilled into our brain from society of this is what you do if you want to be successful. And as we know from just the fire path, just in general, is just because that's what society tells you to do doesn't mean that that's the only way to succeed in this world.
Yeah, and I would also add that as you and I kind of came up through the world of the early days, we were introduced to this concept of just grind it out and hustle to the point where you can reach your buy number as quickly as possible, because then you were going to reach that point where you were going to be able to retire early. And, over the course of the last several years, that I guess mindset has shifted more towards like a coast buy philosophy where you can earn a bunch of money and decide where you want your lifestyle to be, set that money aside. It's going to grow in the background, compounding, and you can just take a lesser paying job or do a bunch of passion projects or whatever that might look like for you, have a variety of side hustles that can just pay your bills and your basic living expenses. And, I think that anything like this, and you and I were talking before we hit record, where you're thinking about what is my time frame, and we have a whole episode on that one. But you string a couple of these things together for whatever it is that you might be interested in, Elliot, that pretty soon you don't necessarily need that same level of that fine number changes when you're able to make an extra $20,000 a year or whatever that might be.
I know all of a sudden my expenses I'm going to start ruthlessly cutting to be like, hey, I think I'm actually at five right now. Last I checked, Josh. So yes, it is certainly easy to do when you see what exactly is at stake by continuing to spend more and more. Right? Is would I rather spend less and buy my freedom, or would I rather spend more and toil away at a job? The answer is much closer to A than it is B.
Yeah, I agree.
So, but I wholly echo your sentiments about just like we talked about. I think in episode four, maybe wasn't of something like old school fire versus new fire, right? Is of the mindset of yeah, grinding it out day after day and just slogging away until you get to that magic number, as opposed to, I would say, a much more reasonable approach of saying, hey, maybe let me slow down a little bit and make sure that I'm enjoying the ride all the way.
Yeah, very good point.
So, Josh, out of all of your side hustles, has there been one as of late that has really lit you up?
Really lit me up. Doing this podcast was, and this isn't necessarily a side hustle, but when we got together and first started going down this path, learning new things, I mean, that's for me, it's can I learn something new, and can I do something that I have never done before, and can it be successful in some way? And success can be defined in a lot of different ways, not necessarily monetary, but that does help. But I think, just getting together with you every week and going through having these conversations going through the exercise of trying to put together a podcast that sounds coherent and has decent audio is an ongoing challenge. So continuing to
It's
learn there.
a lot harder than you may think, apparently.
It is.
Yes, there is someday we will figure out all of our audio issues and we will have a perfectly polished sounding podcast. I can't guarantee the content will be any better, but at least it will sound better on the other side. So, we will eventually get these kinks figured out.
Yeah, there's a lot that goes into it. I mean, I always thought that, yeah, you just get together and hit record, and turns out there's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes.
That's right. But it's been fun. I agree. This has certainly been an endeavor, whether you call it a side hustle or not, that has lit me up every single week. Is just looking forward to being able to have these conversations with you. Like you said, continuing to learn things and challenge ourselves. I think this will be what, episode 22. So this is we've come a long way, even in 22 episodes from that very shaky first episode that was scripted. And, we had so many ums and likes and uhs, and that's probably me more than anybody else on this podcast, but true nonetheless.
Oh, I agree. So we'll just keep plugging away at it, but also experimenting with other things. And that's what this is all about. I think you're going to eventually get to that point, Elliot, where you're going to have a lot more free time and the ability to experiment with all kinds of new things. And I know for myself, kind of just getting into this early retirement lifestyle, there's a lot of time where it's just nice to go out and go for a long hike and really enjoy the weather. But then there's that whole other side of you that starts to see life in a whole new way where like everything looks like an opportunity, and you got to kind of like pace yourself. That's what I've found, at least, is that it'd be nice to explore all these opportunities for extra income and part-time work, even though I don't necessarily need to. But for some reason, I see that opportunity everywhere, and I want to go explore it. And I want to challenge myself with all those different ideas. But then I just kind of put all that stuff on my list and I don't get to it, which we've talked about in past episodes. But I mean, it's all about experimenting and figuring out what is going to really, like you said earlier, light you up.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Josh, do you have anything else that you want to say, or should we wrap it right there?
We can wrap it there.
All right. Well, thanks again to all of our listeners of 9 to 5 here. Of course, if you're enjoying the show, please consider giving us a thumbs up on YouTube or a 5-star review on Spotify, Apple, or the podcast player of your choice. Don't forget to like and share us with your friends. We'd love to get your feedback, good, bad, whatever you're feeling, listening, watching. You can send us an email. You may not get a response right away, but we appreciate it. So, once again, thanks so much for tuning in, and for everybody that's given us feedback on, hey, I can't hear you, or hey, you're screaming into the mic. Whatever it is, we appreciate it. And thanks for tuning in.
Thanks, Elliot.
Thanks, sir.